Hi everyone, welcome back for another Hoogwegt MarketMooo. So this is season 4, episode 5. Jurgen, let's go through the different regions and see what's going on there. If there is anything new, anything interesting. Let's start in the US.
Yeah, well, from west to east?
Let's go from west to east.
Great.
Yep, sounds good.
Sounds fair, because the previous time perhaps was the other way around.
We went east to west, yeah.
And the World Cup of football is in the US soon, so
there you go.
West
start
to east.
There.
Yeah, let's start there. Milk production still okay, set on growth. Herd is growing. The yield per cow is still positive. So we are currently seeing, of course, compounding growth in the US, where we are seeing, year-over-year growth percentages, and that are positive.
Are they past their peak though, or are they at the peak?
Yeah, if you look at the year-over-year percentage, that number is past the peak. We were close to, 4% a few months ago. Now it's closer to 2%. It might ease into 1%, but that's for several reasons. And the main reason is, of course, that the numbers are getting harder and harder to beat. Yeah. But the US might still see a year full of growth, which is good, because last year they also saw a year of growth, and so that helps.
Yeah, nice. Okay, yeah.
Protein's still expensive though.
I was just about to ask. Yeah, because so a lot of milk is still going into the cheese for the whey to make whey proteins. Yeah,
the whey proteins are still, at least the price level is really high. So you would assume that it's still, limited supply, or demand is still really good. And we've seen MPCs, for example, increasing as well in terms of price, which is still sort of a cheaper alternative for the WPI, WPC 80. It's not to be used in every application though, because it's a different protein, but that follows the trend. And technically, SMP, non-fat dry milk, also a milk protein, is also still pretty high in the US.
Yeah, but I think, if people can switch from WPCs, WPIs to MPCs, makes a lot of sense, right?
Switching from the whey to MPC, but that's
from
not,
a price perspective.
From
it
a
makes
price
a lot
perspective,
of sense.
But it's not always a possibility, etc.
No, especially like we said in one of our other episodes in the sports industry.
Yeah.
It'll be probably difficult to suddenly go to milk proteins instead of whey proteins.
And you cannot switch easily from, hey, we use MPC, now all of a sudden we use SMP because that's cheaper or something. It doesn't work like that. But from a producer's perspective, if you can produce both products, say MPCs and SMP or non-fat dry milk, it might be, interesting, and it might give us a correlation between SMP and MPC prices.
So that could be another reason why SMP prices or non-fat dry milk prices would stay elevated.
Yeah, that could. The problem is that you have lack of data. But if you look within the balance sheet of non-fat dry milk, production is still, the March number came out, was still 10% higher than the year prior. The year prior was, of course, affected by bird flu, if you still remember, in California, their main non-fat dry milk producing state, SMP producing state, but it was still higher than that. And the stocks were low, but not that low. So people are looking within the non-fat dry milk balance sheet and are reasoning, hey, okay, there were recalls that might be released on the market or might not be released, but prices are too high for that balance sheet if you take the entire history into account.
Yeah.
And if you look outside of that box, you could run into MPC prices and the strong correlation it has with non-fat dry milk and skimmed.
Yeah. But currently, S&P prices in the US are still way above European prices. Yeah. So let's move to Europe. Yeah. Little bridge there.
Yeah, great bridge.
So what are you seeing in Europe except for high S&P prices?
Yeah, indeed, high S&P prices, while production still is really strong. I think some countries now reported their March numbers, but those were only a few countries. But January, February, the end of last year, production was really ramping up, because milk production in Europe is strong, has been really strong, and a lot of that surplus went into S&P production and butter. S&P, Europe had a lot of exports because we were the most competitive on price.
If you can buy a European product, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, so we got rid of quite a bit of S&P as well. That helps. And since the the Americans went sky high with their price, all we had to do was remain under that American price level, which we did, but it's lifted European prices up as well.
Yeah, and you said a lot is going towards S&P and butter.
Yeah.
Butter prices are not as firm.
No, because you don't have the outlet for butter in exports. It's domestically used. Production has been really strong as well because, raw milk prices were really low. So you would produce commodities of that extra milk surplus. Milk's all over the place in Europe, has been all over the place in Europe. So that means butter production and S&P production. But butter is 90% domestically used. And I believe that retail figures and a few other figures were quite positive for butter. But the production outweighed the demand. So there was a lot of stock building in butter, and thus prices went lower. And you don't have that dynamic that you currently see in S&P in terms of international trade. And therefore butter moved in a different direction than S&P.
Yeah. And on the milk production within Europe, we're past the peak in some countries, right?
Yeah, the seasonal peak usually is sometimes it's the end of April or in early May, etc. So that's one, because we're now past the first weeks of May, so we can be past the seasonal peaks for most countries. But also if you look at the year-over-year comparison, there are now a few countries that were very positive, France, UK, but are now reporting slightly negative year-over-year figures. Because farmers are reasoning, okay, the price is still fair, but it's not as high as it was like a year ago. Because a year ago we saw 55, 60 cents payout price. Now it's in the low 40s.
Yeah, exactly. And then are your expectations that until towards Q4 probably it'll still be above last year, but into Q4 will be below? Because of the strong...
Perhaps even, it depends, because I do believe that the production increase last year started to ramp off in June. So June would already be hard to beat. The Germans, though, are still on very positive numbers. So that sort of gives us a little bit of headroom as well. So it might be Q3 that you would run into neutral and negative year over year.
Yes, that might be where it starts. But especially Q4 was very strong last year.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really hard to beat. On top of that, you would be worried on fertilizer costs as a farmer. And you would be worried on energy costs. And the fertilizer can possibly have a double whammy because it makes your feed more expensive, but it also lowers the quality of your grass. And therefore becomes a problem because everything good in milk comes from the grass.
Yeah, okay.
And the beautiful little ladies eating the grass, but so the fertilizer cost and lack of availability can come in play as well. And the longer that the conflict around the Persian Gulf remains, the bigger that problem is.
Yeah. Okay, something to keep an eye on. Yeah. And then let's go to the last main production region, New Zealand.
Yeah.
They're in their low season, of course.
Yeah, but wrote really strong production figures for March, April. So production was really strong. And I look at a few things for New Zealand to think about next season. And of course, the fertilizer cost is one of the arguments that you could have, because that could also potentially affect the Kiwi farmers and lower the milk production. But I must say the milk price in New Zealand is pretty good and still is an incentive to ramp up production. So that's on the other side where you could expect, for example, a higher milk production. And let's see how that plays out next season.
So what are your expectations for the new season?
I still am set on neutral. It's very weather dependent. And El Nino is a little bit of the talk of the town there, because people are saying an elevated likelihood of an El Nino happening, and that comes with droughts in around the start of 2027, so Q1. And people are saying, okay, there's a 25%, 30% likelihood of El Nino taking place. It also means that, there's a 70% likelihood of
it not taking place.
Yeah, well, or
not
at least,
as badly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
but still, there is still a risk there. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah. And I believe most of the bigger players are also expecting like a neutral season for New Zealand. Of course, day 2 wrote great figures. And those numbers are hard to beat because milk production was really strong in this current season that now comes to an end.
Yeah, yeah. And then on the demand side, I mean, one of a main region, China.
Yeah, I believe it was one of our previous podcasts, we spoke about the powder demand in China and that we expected whole milk powder imports to be quite fair and the S&P imports from China to be limited because the applications of S&P are not too popular. And people are still looking at S&P stocks and they are low indeed. But the use of where you would use your S&P for also is low. So imports of S&P have been lower. Whole milk powder, pretty strong imports.
Yeah, yeah. And do you think a lot of Chinese buyers are kind of waiting for the new season in New Zealand?
Yeah, because that's a fair argument because we spoke about S&P in Europe and the US, and currently because New Zealand is in their winter season, we sort of lost a competitor temporarily. Yeah. And a lot of people would be anticipating the start of the new season in New Zealand as well, and the Chinese would be one of them indeed. Yeah. And then it also has the effect that you'll have another competitor back in your play. Yeah. From the European perspective.
Yeah. Well, great. Let's do a finish with bulls and bears. Let's do it for skimmed. So let's both do a bull and a bear. Feel free to start.
I think I can think about 2 bulls for skimmed. Can I give them both?
Sure.
Yeah.
Give them both.
One would be indeed, the US. And we're still below.
Yeah, and that prices are so high there.
Yeah, so why go lower? And New Zealand is, as you rightfully pointed out, New Zealand is not around.
So you have one competitor that's non-existent
that's really
and one competitor that's really expensive. So why would European prices move down?
And the other one would be indeed, as you also pointed out, Q4 milk production. And on top of that, the possible issues with fertilizer, energy cost, etc., that could crush margins for farmers and have a negative effect on milk production because lack of fertilizers gives you issues. So that would be the other one, because then you don't have a milk surplus and the S&P production is the one that's being affected by that negatively.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of snuck a third one in there, the Q4 milk production that's expected to be lower. Yeah. And on the bearish side?
For skimmed, I can imagine that, a lot of demand has been quite well in the second half of last year and actually at the start of this calendar year so far. The first 2-3 months are now known and those weren't that bad. Those were actually quite good. And I can imagine that some people bought a little bit extra around when the conflict started around Persian Gulf.
Yes, try to stock up a little bit.
Stock up a little bit. Yeah. But what would you do if, eventually you would have bought enough product, so you might see a bit of lower demand. On top of that, prices have increased, so there might be some elasticity there as well. So why would demand be all of a sudden so great?
Yeah, good point. Yeah. And then on the other side, we said at the moment, New Zealand is not a competitor.
Yeah.
But going forward, they will come back into their season or start their new season, and they will become a competitor again. So that could be another bearish argument.
Yeah, because they need their exports, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
I think that's a great way to end this. Yeah.
Thanks.
Are you traveling anywhere next couple months or something?
Yes, I'm going. Good that you ask. So people might find me in Chicago in June.
Nice.
I'm going to the High Ground Conference and I'm going to see my beloved colleagues in the US. I see them once a year because I write stuff for them and I cooperate with them. So I'm looking forward to that.
Also, if any of our viewers see you in Chicago, they can come over and say hi to you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, would
Sounds
love that.
good. Yeah.
Where are you going? Where can people find you?
One of the main events I'll be going to is the PTF dinner in London, beginning of July.
Yeah.
So usually see a lot of people from the industry there. So anyone who sees me there can definitely come over and say hi.
Say, hey, I know you from the podcast.
Exactly.
Great. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jurgen.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed it, everyone.